Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in today. My name is Jana Davidoff, and I'm the CEO of Rhapsody PR, and we are thrilled to be partnering with the CDC on today's panel. Now, just to clarify, when I say CDC, I am not referring to the Centers for Disease Control. That would be a different panel, but I am referring to the Composers Diversity Collective, which will prove to be a far more entertaining panel, and Matthew will tell you all about it shortly. I'm going to turn the panel over, but before I do, there are several people who made today's panel possible whom we would like to thank, including the Composers Diversity Collective, our wonderful panelists, Amanda, Sid, Rickey, Kris, and Labrinth, all of whom recently received Emmy nominations that were very well deserved, and all of whom will receive proper introductions very shortly. Congratulations to all of you. And also thank you to Michael Abels, George, JB, Omar, Alex Beck from my team at Rhapsody PR, Ray and Lana from Costa Communications, and last but certainly not least, our incredible moderator. He is the co-composer for the upcoming IFC Midnight Thriller Centigrade, as well as the host of the podcast Composer Talk, which if you haven't checked out yet, you absolutely should. It's fantastic. Please give a warm welcome to Matthew Wang. Take it away, Matthew.
Well, I'm very excited to be here today on behalf of the Composers Diversity Collective. First, I just want to say that for those who aren't familiar with the organization, it was co-created by acclaimed composer Michael Abels to increase awareness of music creators of diverse backgrounds. The group is a response to Hollywood saying, we'd love to hire female composers, Black composers, Hispanic composers, just more diverse voices, but we don't know any. Well, with the collective, we're here to say that we are here. And what a year for diversity for the Emmys. I'm so excited to welcome our panelists, and yeah, let's just dive right in. First off, we got Amanda Jones, nominated for score for documentary for Apple's Home. This nomination makes her the first African-American female to receive a score nomination. Siddhartha Khosla, oh yeah. Siddhartha Khosla, nominated for music and lyrics for NBC's This Is Us. His nomination last year for score for series for This Is Us gives Khosla the distinction of being the first South Asian person to be nominated in the Primetime Emmy score category.
Go Khosla.
Rickey Minor, double nominee for music direction for ABC's The Oscars and CBS's The Kennedy Center Honors. Kris Bowers, nominated for score for limited series for FX's Mrs. America. And last but not least, double nominee Labrinth for score for series as well as original music and lyrics for HBO's Euphoria. Thank you all for being here.
Yeah.
Cool. So, I'm just going to ask each of you a question first, and then we'll kind of open up questions to everyone. But first, starting with Amanda, congrats on Home. There have been 2 tracks released called House Being Built and Soot House. And on those, I really like that there's this cool indie band vibe going on, and your players include like Lee Harcourt on drums, Emir Kinsella, and Sumit on violin and viola. So I want to ask, what was the process when approaching the music and picking your bandmates for this kind of project?
Yeah, sure. So it was basically creative conversations with the Apple TV music team and the creative producers, just kind of like, defining our sonic universe. And they were really excited for me to like kind of lean into like a more of a songwriter sensibility. So I'm using my voice on the score as like a texture. I'm playing guitar, bass, and then I brought in Lee Harcourt on drums, and then I have violinists Emma and Sumit kind of doing like fun extended technique stuff, like just weird noises with their violin, and taking those recordings, looping them, making them like a really cool percussive vibe, and then just getting really crazy with the music. So I was just really happy that they let me kind of be like my true artistic self when like creating the score. It was a lot of fun, but it became ambitious at a certain point because I felt like I was creating an album for an episode as opposed to like just like scoring it and kind of like getting themes that were reminiscent of other themes. It was like very, very intensive in a lot of ways, but it was a lot of fun. I loved it.
And then Rickey, for you, I want to ask about the challenges of being a music director for these huge events that are live on TV and how the 2 shows differ in terms of the technical challenges or creative challenges.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're similar in that the system, and it starts about 3 months earlier generally, and just laying out, it's a puzzle piece, and you're just trying to find the right songs, the right performers, and kind of marry that and make sure that shines. I think the Oscars have a challenge in time. I mean, all of these jobs that we do have time, but this one, you basically have 1 week starting at Capitol Records and 2 days at Capitol rehearsing and recording about 160 pieces of music and five nominees for best song. So you're rehearsing and recording at the same time. Some of the play on stuff is pre-recorded and mixed so that we're ready to go for the winner. And those winner cues are there, but the live play-ons are live. And so it's the winner play-ons that we have to pre-record and mix and be ready. And it's a week. It's like Sunday to Sunday and you're live Sunday. By Wednesday, you're at there and you're live. So it's hard keeping the orchestra focused, because that's a lot of time for a lot of people together to kind of stay focused, to keep the energy right, and then to try to make sure the artists are good. But the creative part is always challenging.
Gotcha. And then Sid, for This Is Us, the music has always hit the audience emotionally. And it's especially true with the song you're nominated for, Memorized. Can you talk about what it was like working with Blake Stadnick and filming the performance of the song at the Greek Theater?
Yeah, so in the beginning of this season, Dan Fogelman, who created the show, kind of gave me kind of like my big task for the start of the season. And he's like, we're going to have an episode where, Toby and Kate, two of our characters, they have a son, and that son is a pop star in the future. And you have to write his like big song, and you're going to see him performing this in front of thousands of people at the Greek Theater. And and so what I found out in the process was Blake Stadnick, his character is visually impaired. Blake himself is visually impaired. It was an incredible, process for me to work with somebody who couldn't see. And Blake just knocked it out of the park. I mean, he and I got together and we rehearsed the song. We worked on it together, kind of taught him everything that he needed to know to sing it. He performed that song live at the Greek Theater in front of, I don't know, maybe like 10,000 people, or not 10,000, maybe 6,000 people in the middle of a Chicago show. Chicago, the band, allowed us to use their audience for their intermission, and Blake gets up there and sings the song live for everybody. We filmed it. So, it's a strange thing that, like, I'm honored, obviously, to be nominated for it. But I feel like, he's sort of like, in my mind, an honorary nominee as well. I mean, this song is nothing without the musicians performing on it, let alone the actor and the singer actually singing and performing the song. So I give Blake a lot of credit, and he pulled off the impossible and nailed it.
Gotcha. Well, speaking of performers and musicians, Kris, you finished the score for Mrs. America during the start of the pandemic. Can you talk a bit about the process of like trying to get it all done amidst just all the craziness, and also whether the approach on that has also changed the way you approach future scores while in quarantine or after?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to answer that first, it's definitely changed the way that we're approaching scores. I mean, I'm working on a couple projects right now where we're already scoring things, during this pandemic, and trying to figure out how we can not only get the best sound possible while still using players that we love working with, but also, having that isolation actually allows for even more weirdness, I'll say, with like production. And like, that was something that I started to experiment with on Mrs. America already. With the score, I was adding a lot of delays to each of the sections, and the patterns that they're playing are already creating these like rhythmic interlockings. And so, adding delay to that just kind of makes it more of a cacophony, but having it on different sections makes it a little difficult. We already had to stripe things, and being able to record everybody individually actually made that even a bit more, I could be even more specific with that. I think that was pretty fun. But as far as how we were able to do it, I think the biggest thing I've felt is just appreciation for having an incredible team, and also just a resource of other composers that are also trying to figure this out while we're doing this. I think that as soon as I knew that we were going to have to deal with the possibility of a shutdown, and I can't even really remember the conversation with like the producers or director. I think that they were probably all trying to figure out how we were going to get this done. And at some point kind of came to me with looking for a plan. So there was no conversation. And I feel like I immediately just reached out to my contractor, Peter Roder, and other composers like Phil Eisler or even Jeff. But I feel like, my team put together this sheet where we were able to tell each musician what we needed from them, how they should record themselves, what we needed as far as file delivery, because we were going to prepare everything on Dropbox and then needed them to upload it back to Dropbox. And then my mixing engineer, Steve K, he would talk to them about their miking position, and we would do a test run of them recording themselves, and then we'd listen to that and give them notes on that so we can make sure once we were recording, we felt really good about what we were getting. And then the musicians, it's just really incredible that, usually you can count on maybe tracking, I don't know, like 15 minutes or 20 minutes and a few hours. And I feel like now they're having to track themselves, edit themselves, like clean up any of the stems before they send them off, make sure everything's named properly. So they're their own engineers as well. And we definitely want to give them extra time to be able to get that done. But I think that I was just really appreciative that they not only did all of that on this incredibly high level so that we rarely had any hiccups with anything technically, just musically, they also just still played with such heart and emotion that once we were then putting everything back together and piecing it together for the mix, it all sounded great. And sometimes we had musicians play, if they had two instruments, we would have them layer a few times, once in mutes, and play on different, if they have two violins, play on the other violins, we can get a different sound and stuff like that, or play different spaces from the mic. But I was actually really pleasantly surprised with how it came out. But again, it's mainly just having a team, helping figure that out.
For sure. And then Labrinth, you've collaborated with musical artists ranging from Sia, Diplo, Queen Bee, Zendaya. But when collaborating with Sam Levinson on Euphoria, you explored a lot of different musical territory, from trap drums played in an acoustic kit to gospel vox. Can you talk about how working with a non-musical artist like Sam pushed you musically and what you learned working on the show?
Sam is, I think, one of the most musical people I've met in film. And I remember working on other, mini bits. I remember working on a few, kind of title songs for movies, and they would come back and be like, yeah, we want the song more purple, or we want, they would just say these weird things that have nothing to do with music. And it was pretty confusing, but you had to work it out. Whereas Sam kind of came to me and just was like, Lab, I want to mess around with Kanye Yeezus meets Danny Elfman meets 9 Inch Nails. And it was just all these different influences, and kind of allowed me to have as much fun and to explore this unlimited playground of genres and styles. And what was fun for me is, while creating commercial music, which I've done for most of my career, it felt like commercial music was way more rigid than this experience of scoring a show, because the weird little fiddly bits that you make in the studio just for tinkering and just for enjoyment don't always make the cut of, your top 5 records, if that makes sense. So it was nice to be able to explore areas of myself musically. If I wanted to make a soul record and go in and be a whole different artist, I could on this score, which was, it just made me enjoy music again, I would say.
Amazing. Yeah, and then I'm just going to start opening questions to anyone who wants to answer. But this year in particular, we're seeing a lot more Black artists and composers nominated. So I'm curious if you want to talk about your experience working in post. Out of curiosity, are you seeing a lot of fellow Black creatives in the post stage, or is the post-production world still predominantly white and male, let alone the composer world that you know?
Who's going first?
I can't answer that question.
I'm so sorry, Matt. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, I know. I need that question repeated again. Sorry.
Yeah, say it one more time.
So out of curiosity, in your experience being in the post-production stage of film, or of TV in this case, do you see a lot of fellow Black creatives in that world, or is it still predominantly not?
Are you meaning with kind of sitting with engineers, or just kind of, are you meaning editing, or sure, layering? Yeah.
Editors.
Okay.
That kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't say much on that because I sat in the room with a lot of the stuff. I kind of basically just do it myself, because I just kind of grew up that way in the studio. But I don't know what yeah, maybe you guys would know better than I would. Amanda, you
Yeah.
was gonna say something, sorry.
Yeah, I think for me, I was really like for my first like 3 television series, like a Black Lady sketch show, 20s, and Cherish the Day. I was very fortunate to like work with teams that were very diverse. So it was very like comfortable, and I could just be myself. When I walk into like the editing bay, it's just like all these like Black female editors and people of all different backgrounds, and it was like amazing. It looks like America. It looks like the world.
Yeah.
And so, and it's only recently that I've like just begun to work on projects where the subjects of my work aren't my race, like they're not Black. So, and yes, that landscape's a little bit different. So, but I don't know, I'm really happy to see that there's a lot of productions that are, you know, operating at a level that's like fantastic, and their shows are doing well, and they have very diverse crews, and they're very committed to doing that, from like top to bottom, from like whoever's in front of the camera, behind the camera. But I think I do recognize I've been in a bubble. I don't know, it's just like I was like kind of, those early shows were kind of like in a really beautiful space that kind of, I learned so much, and I could make mistakes, you know, in a community that like understands me. And I feel like, but yeah, I feel like, you know, there could be more TV series and content with more diverse crews for sure. So, they're out there.
It's interesting, as I'm Indian, so I can't really comment on your questions specifically, but I will say that I've found on This Is Us, for example, although in post-production there is not that much diversity in terms of who's editing and who's in that group. There's a lot of diversity in the show's cast and in the writing. And so that's especially kind of comforting to see, especially since the show is dealing with a lot of African American stories, and there's a lot of Black writers on the show in very senior positions, who in my mind write, like, you know, some of our finest episodes that we have. And to the larger point of diversity, you know, I think over the last few years we've seen. We've been living in this golden age of television. And part of the reason why we're in this golden age, in my mind, is that writers are telling authentic stories about diversity. America, you know, specifically is in most countries are built on immigrants. And as I'm seeing some of these stories being told in Hollywood, I'm noticing kind of what Amanda just said, that you're seeing diversity kind of trickle down through post-production and some of the writing, because frankly, if there's a show about African-American culture, then there should be an African-American composer composing that music, because he or she would know that world better than anyone else. Just like if there's a show about an Indian Indian coming to America, I should be doing that show. Or some of the other amazing men and women of South Asian descent that are coming in. But it's nice to see, Amanda, that you're seeing that diversity.
Yeah, it's happening.
Yeah, I feel like it's similar for me.
Yeah, I think for me it's a little different. I mean, I do primarily live event TV, Oscars, Grammys, Super Bowl, those, and music specials. And it's I've been doing it for many years, and there's very few that are at the table that are you know, a part, having a voice at the table and making the big decisions. These are department heads. So, you know, there's very few of us at the table when the production meetings start, and it is challenging sometimes. I mean, I think that we're seeing it a little more, but it's going to take time. I mean, I think that this moment now has basically you know, caused everyone to take a look at their practices. And so I think that we're going to see more. We're seeing more just in the nominations, because there are people who are decision makers who are able to say, I want this. I want a composer that does this. I want a musician that can write like this. And so it's opening up some, but I think that until the Avas and the Lenas and people like that who are able to say, I want diverse voices, and companies saying we have a responsibility to give opportunity, because I think the numbers are up in the nominations for people of color, because the opportunities are there. It's not that people of color are learning how to do this. They know how to do it, but the opportunity wasn't there. So now you're hearing their voice, and it makes it better. I mean, all of us, no matter where you're from, Black, white, Asian, whatever you're from, it makes us all better if we're all able to participate, because you can learn from everyone. I mean, if you open your mind to do that. And that's what I think that we're not seeing it yet, where you can go, it's really changed a lot. But these numbers show right now that there are a lot of more people of color doing music and television than it was. So therefore you have more opportunities to vote for them.
Matthew, I misunderstood what you said. Sorry, my friend, but Sam did a lot of the writing on the show. So, and the team was pretty small, like in terms of post. The Euphoria team was very much like everybody had their stations, and a lot of us worked quite separate to each other, but Sam was kind of like the nucleus of all of us, because he had a very clear vision of where he wanted to go. But Sam, in terms of him, who he hired, I don't think Sam was just like, if you got what I want to hear, I'm hiring you. And that's he didn't seem to, based on the story he was telling, it seemed like he needed a diverse like kind of cast and a diverse kind of situation, and especially with me being able to produce like urban music as well as like classical stuff, and like kind of I have a mixed sound. I think he just enjoyed that from me, and that's why I kind of got the job, if we put it like that. But of course, my experience in television is pretty small. This is my first show I've ever composed, but just seeing what's out there and seeing the shows that are coming out, and like Atlanta, seeing flipping, what is the show? Insecure, and all these like new like shows for me, especially in the UK, seeing it over the other side. This May Destroy You, This Will Destroy You, like all of these shows, like Rickey was saying, there's a voice there. So now they're going to start hiring new talent, and they're going to hire people close to them, and then we're going to see a lot more kind of diversity just in around us. That's what I'm seeing anyway.
That's great.
Matthew, can I add one more thing to that too? Is that to piggyback on what Amanda was saying before, she hit on something really important, and that is that she has found projects, or she's on a project specifically where she's able to be herself, and I think that's an important part of why we are seeing, I don't know what the numbers were, it was like 28 or 29% of the music nominees or something this year were people of color. And I think they are in that position, because they deserve to be there. They earned the right to be recognized by the Academy. They did good work, but also because the people at the top of those productions were encouraging their crew, their composers, to kind of go out and be themselves and do what comes from their heart. I mean, This Is Us is an American show, but the score for the show is like straight up Indian classical music. I have like kids in India being like, "Hey bro, what did you do there, man? That was awesome." I'm like, dude, I don't know. I'm just kind of grew up that way. That's kind of my point is that you have to have people at the top of these productions that are going to say, go be yourself and do what you're doing. And the more we tell these diverse stories in Hollywood, the more we're going to have people like, Amanda, Kris, Rickey, Labrinth on this
yeah,
panel.
I also think that being yourself isn't necessarily being black though. Like for me anyway, it's like, It's like being myself doesn't mean that I have to make like a jazz record that sounds like Coltrane because I'm black, if that makes
Right.
sense. For me,
Yeah.
being myself is that I should be able to be hired for whatever my skill set is, if you get what I mean. And I think that's really important to me, is that just talent is not, like, I've had a lot of people come to me, and especially in the pop industry, the first question they would ask me when I say I'm in music is like, are you an R&B singer or a rapper? And it's like, yeah, but like it's kind of like by my face basically has a genre already. And I think I think it's important that people are seen for their skills and not necessarily for their background, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
An interesting thing I've
100%.
Amanda and Kris about in the past, which is like when you're or you get a pitch for a show and it's like, hey, we're looking for a black composer or we're looking for an Asian composer, and like, what does that
What does that mean?
Yeah.
I know it's tricky. It's like it's helpful in some ways. It's like, okay, now you're pulling for you're able to like pull from a pool of people that wouldn't normally get a gig.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like double-sided. It's like, okay, now that you're looking for this type of person, what are you actually looking for?
Exactly. Yeah.
So
Like
it'll
Sid,
evolve
Sid,
over time.
like, they're like, Sid, you definitely have a sitar in your studio, right? And I'm like, I don't, but I have a set of tablas, you know. But
so we have a question here from Michael Abels. I want to encourage anyone watching to write in questions in the comments. But Michael Abels asks, to anyone who wants to answer, based on your successes of the last few years, what advice would you give young composers who want to find opportunities as opposed to what you might have thought a few years ago?
I think like putting out and creating your own music, kind of like, you know, what Labrinth was saying too, just like finding a way to express yourself in a most like raw, honest form, and like people will be attracted to that. And I feel like we're in an era now where creatives and filmmakers and studios are looking for somebody that's outside of the box, that's doing something that's unique and different. And so I feel like a lot more likely that you might be able to find a path now by just doing your own thing and becoming a film composer than ever before. Because I feel like before it was all about coming up through, you know, the chain and like working for another composer or working at remote control, and then you can become a composer. And I think now, if you just want to be an artist and a musician and make music that feels cinematic, people will hear that and be attracted to it, and then, you know, reach out to you.
I would just say, to add to that, just write. You know, you don't have to. You could be sitting on. You could be in a period. You could be in a lull in your career where you may not have a lot of stuff going on. Doesn't mean you can't write. And I've found that, I mean, my career was defined by my work in my band more than this. You know, this is happening now because I was in a band and I wrote music in a band that came from my heart, and people are like, I like what that is. Can you bring that sensibility to what you're doing here? And so had I not written on for myself or put out records or, I mean, I even think like if I'm an upcoming composer, I want to write score to projects that don't even exist. And that's something I started doing early in the quarantine. I abandoned that very quickly, but I gotta get back into it. But I started writing like a little, my own little modern classical piano record that Kris Bowers is gonna be like, dude, let me play the piano. That's terrible. And Kris, I will send it to you. But you know, and the idea was I was writing something for something that didn't exist, but I'm like, maybe I could give this to some of my director friends or producer friends or writer friends, be like, hey, would this inspire something for you? And so there's other ways to work too. You don't have to wait for a project to come to you.
That's exactly, yeah. Sorry, go on, Amanda. No, it's fine.
Oh yeah, so I was just gonna mention like whatever PRO you're with, lean into them. You know, I'm with ASCAP. I know BMI is amazing and all the other ones are very great, you know. But you know, I let them know that I was like, you know, doing more like back in 2014, I was like, hey, I'm wanting to do more scoring for film and TV. These are my goals. I went to like the ASCAP office and like sat down with them, and they were just like so helpful. And one of their earliest programs that wasn't even posted on the website, you know, that's part of the other programs they have. They just made it aware. They'd like just let me know that there was like, oh, there's this thing coming up. There's this luncheon where we pair up directors with composers, and you could potentially work on their short film that will premiere at LA Film Festival, which was happening at the time. And so I did that for 2 years, like non-consecutively, and it was like a huge thing. And the directors that I met then back in 2014 are now like creating their own shows on Netflix and like have like feature films coming out their macro, and they're just like, I'm just growing with these directors. So that's like, that's one option. But I feel like find your director and grow with them, but definitely lean on your PRO to help you make those connections too.
Sure. Bob, did you have something?
No, I was just gonna say, I agreed with Sid, because that's kind of what got me the Euphoria gig, was that I was just doing what was natural for me, and a lot of the Euphoria score was what was natural for me, in terms of sounds and tones. I'm massively into like vintage synths, so I wanted to sound like all my favorite heroes, which was like Radiophonic Workshop and Kraftwerk, and all of these guys. So like a lot of this stuff people would have heard and been like, oh, that's interesting, or I like it. It wasn't me sitting in a room going, what do I need to sound like? It was just like, this is what gets my heart going. And then somebody was like, that's interesting enough to be part of my show. So I think that's really important to like just find your own voice in whatever you enjoy, you know?
Well, in terms of being natural, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Sam said that you guys were at a birthday party. He was telling you about the show, and you went on your iPhone, started like humming ideas, and he thought,
yeah,
I want to hire that guy.
Yeah, literally, I make music. I'm like, you know, like, what is it? What's that film where he's like, I hear dead people. It's kind of like that with music. Like that with me. It just doesn't stop. It's just like, but I just hear melodies all the time. There's always some sound going on in there, and I need to like explore it or tinker with it. And so with Sam, when he saw me, he was like, yeah, lab. So I got the show, and I'm like, and he's just like, bruv, what the hell is this? But I think that was our meeting. He was like, you got the gig.
Oh, man.
For sure. Sorry, Chris, I don't know if I cut you off.
Oh, I was just going to say also, one thing that I didn't realize until later is how much editors are incredibly helpful too, because I feel like I've gotten so many opportunities from editor friends of mine that just use my music and cut it into something. And I feel like a lot of times they're picking the temp for the director, and they have a lot of times a big hand in like shaping the sound of a project.
Yeah, great advice.
100%.
You send updated reels of music to your editors?
Yeah, so like ones that are like really good friends of mine, I'll like send some music to, and like, you know, even just especially I think the editors that are incredibly musical, I think are the ones that we already connected anyways on just like sound and the way they approach cutting music, or the way they approach like using creating themes even with their temp music and stuff like that. So I feel like those kinds of editors are guys that I'll just send some music to every now and then, just to, you know, let them know what I've been working on.
Sid, you got to send some of your homeless cues to like some editors, bro. Let's do this. Let's make it happen. I'll be your agent, bro.
He's screaming his head off right now.
Yeah. Oh, God.
So we got a couple questions in now. I just have one last one for everyone here, which we kind of touched on earlier, and I think Rickey brought it up first, but if any of you have any advice for showrunners, directors, producers, studio heads on how to create a more diverse and inclusive space for composers and musicians to come in, I'd love to hear any thoughts.
I think
good question. Yeah, go on, sir.
I think that I mean, I think that also goes higher than the showrunners and the writers and producers. I think it's the networks and the people in charge of kind of bringing in the content to almost make it a mandate on some level to bring inclusive content and look for it. So when you're looking for kind of more diverse and inclusive content, you're going to find your Avas and people in that world who are going to come in and bring you like that magic. Or Alan Yang does that. He did it on Master of None. You know, I think it comes from, it comes from the top too. And I think the more and more diversity we have at the highest levels of these networks, the more we're going to see more of these stories coming through. And you know what? Let's face it. Like, if you're looking at sort of like some of the shows that have gotten so much love and not just from press, but just awards love over the last few years. It's shows that are bringing diversity. I'm seeing, you're seeing it, and it's hopefully that hopefully that encourages the people in command to kind of to be more diverse up there as well.
Amazing. Well, I think we can open it up to some of the other questions here from the audience. So we've got one from Mina. I'm just gonna hit answer live and let's see. Oh wait, nope, let's not do that. Whoops. I'm so sorry, Mina. Your question just disappeared. That's all my bad. Could you resend? Thank you. Well, we'll go with Alvaro. Is it a get out of jail card for white executives to hire a Black, Indian, Latino, Asian, etc. composer for a show that has a Black, Indian, Latino, Asian, etc. story? A good composer is more than capable to write any genre, I think.
Let's see. I'm gonna think about that for a second. So I feel like I think it goes back to that like double-sided thing where it's like you want to hire the best I feel like in a perfect world you'll hire like the best person, but we've yet to arrive at a place where everyone's like on equal footing to be submitted for a gig, if I understand that question correctly. So until we have like this amazing way of when composers are submitted for a series or a film where it's like very diverse with gender and with cultures from people all over the world submitting for whatever project it is, which does not happen, then I feel like, I don't know, it's easy for people to kind of like pigeonhole you based on your culture background. And I feel like because there's haven't been enough people, from different backgrounds working on these projects, it's kind of okay to be pigeonholed at the moment, but we want to, once we're in a position of power as the lead composer for a project that's, high profile, we may have been pigeonholed. We just need to be very vocal with that creative team, just being like, hey, I can do other things, like, just become an activist when you're in that space, being like, you could have hired, someone else, but like, thanks for hiring me, but just let's always be forward thinking in our way of just choosing people. Because like my team is very diverse and that isn't a reflection of the content of the show. It's like I have, musicians and people helping me from all different backgrounds. And that's like, I'm working on shows that are like it runs the gamut of like the culture. Right. So, I don't know if that answers that question.
Yeah, I hope so. Alvaro, feel free to comment if we're answering correctly, but just in general too, it's very easy for composers to get pigeonholed, genre wise too. If a composer does 3 comedy shows, then they'll be the comedy composer. I'm sure someone doesn't want to be labeled that ethnic or diverse composer, Does anyone have any thoughts about like getting out of that kind of pigeonholing, whether it is based off your looks or based off what types of shows you've done?
Go ahead, Kris.
Oh no! I was actually scratching.
I love that.
No, what I was saying.
So what I was.
So here's the thing. To me, I think that no matter what, you have a responsibility to be your best authentic self, and that will open the doors. And I think a lot of times we think we have to do something special. Maybe if I walk in and do a backflip, I'll go like, hey, he's cool. Or, you come in and do something cool, but it's really the work. And I think for me, I've been in this business for a long time, probably longer than most of these guys are old. So, it took time. It took a lot of time for me actually, because I was pigeonholed as the R&B guy who could do the, R&B, the Black music, and so I did a lot of like special celebrating Black music, the NAACP Image Awards. I did a lot of shows and they were all weighted on get the Black guy can do the Black show, but he comes from that. But it took not only, like Amanda said, saying, hey, thanks for the job, but I have a wide love of music and a wide experience in music, and it's for people like Quincy and Harold Willer and some of these people who that we stand on the shoulders of. They have paved the way and showed that it's excellence can be Black excellence. It's not just excellence separately. That that people of color can contribute at the highest level. And but there's a trust in there. And I think that we also have to look at how we handle our business as well, because I never want to be hired because of the skin I'm in. Like, hire me because I'm the best person for the job that you feel is going to deliver the quality, the content, and timely, on budget. All of those things matter. And so I think that it's important to make sure you make your list that you hit every point and not just say, hey, my music was dope, they lucky to have me, you know? Although I did turn it in a week late and we went over budget, twice, or what we turned in was twice as much as the budget, and we complained a lot, and so I mean, you have to make sure that you're working with people, and then they can feel that you care about the project, and you're not looking to be, I just want the job so I can say I did, you know what I mean? You really want it because you're passionate about it, and show that passion, and people believe that, and they need it. They need someone who loves the project, believes in it, and has an answer. A lot of times I go into a job and they go, okay, so Rickey's got the music, who's next? In the meeting, because they know that I'm going to take care of my area, so they don't have to babysit me. And a lot of times, like Labrinth said, I mean, they don't really know, they may not know how to articulate what they need. So listen to them and to tell you what they need, and then, or what they want, and then give them what they need. They appreciate that, giving them what they need.
Wow, nailed it there.
There's a lot in there, sorry.
Nailed it. No, sorry. I know us guys have been having so much jokes before we started this panel, so we're really trying not to turn this into a massive.
Rickey, you should have your bass out. It's like when you nail, like when you have another poignant thing, just down, like just some slap. We need some.
Why
slap.
did it have to be?
Well, now that I know that I could do that, I just didn't want to, take over the thing. Yeah, you tell me what you want, I can make it happen. Yeah. I'm not that kind of guy, but I can be.
Mina's question came in. Thanks again. So, hey, all, loving this so far. Thanks for putting it on. This question is probably part of a much larger conversation, but I'll throw it in. When you're deeply connected with your cultural heritage through music, how do you feel about the way musicians from other cultures currently engage with it? Do you find that people approach it with a lot of respect and creativity, or more tokenistically?
All right, I like that.
I like that. That was funny.
Or likely somewhere in between?
I like that word, tokenistically.
I don't remember the question now, even though I just.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, in my experience, it just depends on like how woke like the showrunner is or the creatives are. Because yeah, I'm like an indie rock and roll person, but I'm often asked to do like hip hop beats, which I think is very funny. I'm like, oh, I play guitar. I don't know if you've heard my band. I'm not a powerhouse. I sing like really delicately.
Yeah.
So I don't know, it's kind of funny, but you just it's like a conversation. I feel like people are trying to understand your culture, and so they may just like over talk and make a lot of mistakes with like word salad and say all the wrong things that are really embarrassing. But I think, people are trying, and you just have to like guide them through the process. Like, it's just like, yeah, Black people play guitar, and we do other things, and outside of just what you would consider as like cliche, and but if there's a specific brief and we have to get it done, it's like I'm happy to do it, but hopefully I can insert some other cool aspects of myself, because I don't know, I had this conversation the other day, like someone asked me what I write is Black music, and I was like, well, I'm a Black person, so yeah, this is Black music. It might sound like Bjork, but it's Black music because I'm Black. So, but yeah, it's kind of weird, but you just gotta like have a sense of humor about it. People are trying, and sometimes people kind of understand like, the music industry is evolving, but other times you gotta really help them and be like, well, yeah, I work with some people that were like, I really want this hip hop beat, and then it took me a really long time to realize that what they really wanted was RJD2. And it was like a different cultural like focal point for hip hop. It was like, whoa. So just like make sure like they know what they actually want. And it was like, yeah, it's crazy.
That sounds like a Lionsgate show.
No, it was.
I mean, that's a good question too, because I've had specific experiences I can share with you without naming any sort of networks specifically. But I did a show once. It was a pilot about an Indian family, and of course, like they called me right away, and they were like, "You would know this better than anyone else. Just come, can you?" It was like some sitcom. And I was nervous going into it because I had this sort of like suspicion that no matter what I turned in for the music for the pilot, that I would get notes back from the studio saying, we need some more tabla, or we need some more sitar. And so it goes back to that other question of who's right for the job. How do you figure that out? So in my mind, right, that show was about a modern Indian family growing up in this country in the US today. And I'm thinking about what kind of music the kids in that family or they're actually listening to or they like. And it's not necessarily classical Indian music from like, you know, like stuff that sounds like Ravi Shankar. So, there's a lot of convincing that has to happen for network and studio executives who are so used to hearing a certain thing. Like it's like a certain sound. I remember getting notes back saying, "Hey Sid, we love the score, but could you just put some tabla in there?" And I was just like, no, because I was like, no. And I was like, I grew up singing that stuff, right? And I understand that so well. And if this were a show about class that was based in maybe like early 20th century in India, and you want to bring in some of the classical Indian music, great. I'm all for it. We do it. But that's not what this is about. This is about this family that's just trying to be American. Whose parents and grandparents are from India. So, and I know that world because I grew up in that world. And so there's ways to do that. And I think what I've found, the question that was asked was, have you found other people, other composers of maybe not your own ethnicity trying to do the same thing, but do it haphazardly or do it sort of lazily? I haven't seen that as much, but I've seen it coming again from like sometimes studio executives that are like, oh man, there's not enough of tabla in there. And then you're like, dude, because there's not going to be. And then you stick to it. So I think that's another point to be made, is that just because you're Black or I'm Indian, doesn't mean that our music that we're putting out has to have hip hop beats and tablas.
Do you know one thing that kills me? I haven't necessarily had an experience, but when I watch films that are supposed to represent the East, which is so broad and so mixed in terms of genres and music and style, and then they use the same harmonic minor scale, or they use the same, like literally the same lines, like da 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 da, and you're like, come on! It's like, it's so vast and it's so broad, and the styles of music are different, and so and even the singing styles are different in the East. Right. So when you can hear that they've been lazy, like, and they've been like, it almost sounds like a gimmick of a sound, or it's like, this is how we see you. That's what it sounds like to me when I hear like scores like that. Yeah. So yeah, that's something that bothers me when I kind of listen to scores, especially like that kind of thing.
I'm so done with hearing shakuhachi like.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I know too. Every time there's a Chinese person named Mei Ling on TV. We have an interesting question from someone from the Caribbean asking from David, how to be involved with productions in the US.
I thought he was going to ask about Cool Runnings. I was going to be like, bro, don't talk about Cool Runnings. The worst. If you're from the Caribbean, Cool Runnings is the worst thing you've ever seen. I got to be honest. Come on. Sorry. Anyway, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, that's like a really messed up. Let's see. I think, oh gosh, let me think about this for a second. I think, so you want to be part of a community that you want to be part of. So COVID sucks right now and it's limiting people from being able to travel. But I think, like, I have yet to work on a production in London, or I don't know, just different parts of the world. Like, there was one German production I worked on. It was kind of random, but I think you kind of physically have to be present in the space. It's kind of tricky. Hopefully with groups like the Composers Diversity Collective, it makes it a lot easier for US productions to like source talent from all over the world. And that's what I hope happens with this group. But historically, I've kind of found, I'm originally from like the East Coast, like Washington, DC area. And I feel like I had to be in LA to kind of really soak up that community and understand it and kind of like be part of it and kind of get into the fold. So I think, you know, just kind of join groups like these. And once COVID ends, definitely travel to, you know, probably LA and see if you can attend some mixers that are happening. You know, join the TV Academy if you can, and just mix and mingle with that community. And I feel like that, it's like kind of, coming from like the band world, I felt like if you wanted to like tour with a certain musician, it's good if you go to their show and like support them. It's kind of similar in like the film and TV industry. It's like, I feel like if you attend a panel or attend, like if you go on Twitter and like people like Ava or Lena or I don't know, all different directors are always hosting events before COVID, and you can actually meet them and talk to them. And it's like you might find out about it a day before, but if you're in LA or if you're in that community, it's like easy just to show up and just like, it's like open bar and you can have a lot of fun and you can just like mix and mingle with like the creatives that you're like authentically excited to like tap into their community. So that helps if you can be physically present, but I think the next best thing is to join groups like these where you can tap into that network kind of like remotely, and then we can help facilitate those connections through briefs that we send out to our composers and other things.
Right. Yeah. It seems like it's funny because like the process, I mean, everyone's working basically from home or 5 minutes from home right now. So like you don't need a studio in LA to be a composer these days. But it's true that, well, three, or actually, I don't know, Rickey, you're LA based as well. So four here are LA based.
Enjoying our LA sun.
Yeah.
That's right.
I'm jealous, guys. It just started raining here.
And the wind's blowing in my hair.
I want to point out one thing back to the other question too, is that, and I want to maybe clarify something I said earlier, and it's not to say that if you're not of the ethnicity of what the subject matter is, you shouldn't be able to do it. I'm not saying that. I mean, look at what Ludwig did for Black Panther, for example, right? Mm-hmm. There was a concerted, I mean, he's not African American, but the score for that was the furthest thing from lazy. It was focused. He did his research. I think he went to Africa to record drums in villages in Africa, to record like musicians playing, and he incorporated that into a score. So to me, that's like the benchmark right there, right? It comes down to knowledge, right? So if there's something that I'm particularly knowledgeable about, because I knew the kind of music my parents were listening to in the 50s and 60s, and I grew up hearing that old Hindi music, and there's a film today about India, I can bring in that influence because I have the knowledge to bring it in. And Ludwig showed us that he can also have the knowledge too to do it. And so, you know, I think it's knowledge, and I know not to be cliche, but knowledge is power, and particularly with music, it's like if you know it, if you immerse yourself in the world in the right way, you can pull it off, and that's the most respectful way to do it.
Yeah, and if there's not any knowledge, then research is definitely the vibe. Like, I think it's important. Yeah,
I mean, I don't know him, so maybe he did have the knowledge too, but he certainly did the research, right?
Yes, without a doubt. Yeah.
And there's an interesting line between, I guess, appropriating the sounds and cultures of someone as opposed to like appreciating it and actually taking that time to go in and do the work.
Right. No, absolutely.
Yeah, one of my favorite.
Yeah, I probably should mention I just did like a South Asian like indie film.
Oh, sick.
I'm getting off now.
But I just wanted to mention that I made sure that the person I was working with, like my team, it was just like, you know, it was like I had to create original songs. It was like the most daunting thing I've ever done. And so I worked with like Bengali speaking singers, and I had an additional writer, that we worked so closely together to make sure that, you know, everything sounded great. And that was a really interesting process because the director is like a Bengali speaker, but it was a unique challenge just to go back to like research and knowledge.
Yeah.
Because I hired a lot of people that were like kind of native Hindi speakers. And this is a mistake probably because I'm not South Asian. So, and then they were like, oh, but I can sing in Bengali. But then when I showed the director these songs, she was like, okay. And then she showed her mom these songs, and her mom was like, that's not Bengali. That does not sound right. And I was like, uh-oh, it's running out of time. So, and even the additional writer that I brought on, he was Bengali. And he even thought, so I feel like there's like a generational thing that I discovered.
Right. That's deep, though. Yeah, that's the depth. That's the depth of what's required. That's a great point.
Research, yeah. Exactly.
And so it took some time, and I'm glad we had like a buffer to kind of like learn that process and just make sure like the prayer song sounded correctly and instrumentation made sense. And but it was like a contemporary story. It was like about growing up in Pittsburgh. And so she was like, what was it? Oh, she wanted what is that one? She was like, I want the like the end credit song to be like Mo meets I forget the song, but it was like this crazy hybrid. And I was like, I can do the indie thing, and then let me have my additional writer like help me with the lyrics, and then like combined we'll like create this new hybrid thing. But it was definitely like it was a process, and it was like it was an amazing experience. And so I don't know, I'm glad I worked on it.
That's great. That's funny you say that, because I just got hired to compose music about a Black indie rocker nominated for an Emmy for Best Documentary. So I feel like
there we go.
Dude, I'm so gullible.
No, I might need to call you.
I don't think you want to really be a TV writer. To have you on This Is Us, start writing some episodes. Wrap up soon. So I'm just going to take another round of thank yous again to Michael Abels. And thank you, Michael. See you commenting here. Jana, Rhapsody PR, and all the amazing panelists, Amanda Jones, Siddhartha, Kris, Lab, Rickey, and Matthew Wang. And thank you so much, everyone, for attending.
When are we all meeting?
I know.
Yeah, I know we all need to meet, man. I need to hang.
Are you coming out?
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm a newbie. I'm coming to LA, man. Let's do this.
Yeah, you're gonna come out at 2022.
Yo, bro, for real. Yo, when is this lockdown gonna cut, man?
Hey, yeah, well, we could just set up a Zoom.
Yo,
hang,
yeah, let's do it. I'm down. But we gotta make sure that the feed is sweet so that we can all jam as well. Because
exactly.
We're gonna have some. You're gonna be like, that solo would have been amazing if it was in time. You know. That's what it's gonna be like.
I'll have to play myself on. Like.
Yeah.
You'll hear the sound, and then I'll come into the frame.
That's the one.
And I'll bring my sitar, okay? I promise.
There we go.
Thanks everyone for attending, and hope to see you at the next Composer Diversity Collective event. And
and I'll see you guys at the Emmys.
Thanks, man.
Yes, no,
for real. All right, guys.
But we'll hook up soon.
100%. Yeah. Loads of love, man. Pleasure, man.
Great seeing you all.
Cool. Bye.
Peace.